This is the event, many of you will know, we founded the festival more than 16 years ago as a tiny pilot, and it was an amazing woman called Professor Jane Moody who co-founded the festival with me. And very sadly, Jane died of a recurrence of breast cancer about 6 months after the first festival. And so we always choose an event that honours her memory. She was an extraordinary academic. She was the first founder of the University of York's Humanities Research Centre. She was also one of the most riotous women I've ever known. And so it was a very, very easy job this year in choosing an event to essentially memorialise Jane's extraordinary contributions by choosing Sally's event, Riot Women. And we're absolutely honoured to welcome back Sally, who is a York graduate. She is a York honorary graduate. She is extraordinary. And it's also brilliant to see lots of riotous women in the audience this morning. Now, you may have noticed we were originally billing this as a conversation with Emma Barnett, which is my second piece of news. Very sadly, not sadly, but Emma has a scheduled medical issue, and she had to email us a week ago to say it had been moved and she needed to be able to do this. And obviously we understand and we wish Emma every success and keeping well, because she is an extraordinary woman and we've worked with her before, and she and Sally have done events for us before, and it's really sad that she couldn't be here today, and she wants to send her very best wishes to all of you. But in true football parlance, we have a super sub, which is Beth Johnson, who is the co-author of the book Sally Wainwright. So we are extraordinarily lucky to have a world's leading expert on the extraordinary Sally Wainwright, and I'm now going to hand over to Beth to lead us through a conversation that I know we're all looking forward to hearing. And thank you again to both Beth for being a super sub, and especially to Sally for breaking into her incredibly busy schedule to be with us this morning at the York Festival of Ideas. And thank all of you.
Well, hello everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to the York Festival of Ideas. My name's Beth Johnson. I'm a Professor of Television and Media Studies at the University of Leeds, and I'm co-author of the book Sally Wainwright with Kristen Gorton. So today I'm really honoured to be chairing this event, and it is my great, great pleasure to welcome you all here. It's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Sally Wainwright. Sally is a Yorkshire-born writer, producer and director who was awarded an OBE in 2020 for her contributions to writing and television. Sally began her career with the stage play Hanging On at the Edinburgh Festival before writing on BBC Radio 4's The Archers and for ITV's Coronation Street, amongst many, many other things. So Sally went on to create lots of brilliant returning series, including things like Scott and Bailey, Last Tango in Halifax, which won BAFTAs for Best Drama and Best Drama Writer in 2013, and Happy Valley, which has received multiple BAFTAs, RTS Awards, and also Broadcasting Press Guild Awards over its 3 series. Most recently, Sally has created, written and exec produced the historical fantasy drama Renegade Nell for Disney+, and of course Riot Women, also directing 3 episodes for BBC One and for BritBox. So Sally is currently working on a second series of Riot Women, which will be our main topic of discussion today. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome Sally. Welcome. Okay, so firstly, huge congratulations, Sally, on the success of Riot Women.
Thank you.
It's a phenomenal series, and since it's aired, audiences have now had time to sit with the world, time to sit with the characters, and we now know, which is really exciting, that a second series is coming too.
Yeah.
Part of the York Festival of Ideas is for this year, thinking about place and space. So I wanted to start with a question about Hebden Bridge. It feels so embedded in the DNA of the show Riot Women, and obviously the Yorkshire landscape, something that you've returned to time and time again across your career. What made Hebden Bridge, Sally, so special in terms of that setting for Riot Women?
I think, first of all, I live in Oxfordshire, and I did consider setting it in the village where I live in Oxfordshire. I live in a tiny little village called Stonesfield, and it's a great village. It's got a fantastic community, And I did think, you know, just for the sake of writing somewhere else.
Yes.
Because, you know, I hate to get pigeonholed, and I've kind of pigeonholed myself by setting things very much in West Yorkshire, which I love for reasons I'll talk about. But I did consider just setting it in Stonesfield, just to be different, just to have different voices, different accents, and a slightly different sensibility. But when I started storylining it, it just felt so much more appropriate that it should be in Hebden Bridge. So Hebden Bridge, I'm sure a lot of you know, but some of you may not know, Hebden Bridge is this fantastic little town near Sorby Bridge where I grew up, but it's a kind of a sort of little oasis of quite alternative people, and it's very colourful, and it just felt so much more appropriate. The show just felt very Hebden Bridge. When I sort of worked out some of the stories and who the characters were. And I think if I had set it in Stonesfield, it would have worked. I mean, we've got some wonderful characters in our village. And I'm sure I could have made an equally interesting story, but I just came back to, it did feel very much of that world. And I like the idea that it was also, you know, Happy Valley was also set very much in Hebden Bridge. And Riot Women was even more, so I think we shot even more in Hebden for Riot Women than we did Happy Valley. And I think Happy Valley was so dark. I mean, it had its funny moments, but it was quite dark. It was quite a dark side of Hebden. And of course, Hebden has this much more, you know, just very cultured and lively and full of beans side. And I kind of wanted I wanted to reflect that, and I wanted the show to have that feel about it. So it became perverse not to set it there, I suppose. But I can't help thinking what would have happened if I had set it in Oxfordshire now. You know, would it have worked in quite the same way? But I guess the reason I do go back to setting things where I grew up is where I grew up. I think a lot of it is, it's two things. It's the landscape and the accent. It's, you know, it's just great shooting there. You know, it's very hard to find an angle that doesn't look fantastic if you're shooting outside. There's so many choices about nooks and crannies, you know, that are interesting, that have great, you know, you want every frame to have great visual interest, and it's just so much easier there. There's so much depth to every vista, you know.
Yeah.
And again, with the accent, I think it's just that, I don't know if it's just writing in your own vernacular that you can get more humour out of the language. I often find myself using phrases that I remember my mum or my granny saying. And they sound old-fashioned, but then I'll hear my niece, who's a lot younger than me, using them. So I know they're not old-fashioned. They are still bits of language that are used. And so if I set something in Oxfordshire, I don't think I'd have access to those. Yeah. What expression did I use the other day that made me laugh? That seemed quite old-fashioned. I can't remember anything anymore, by the way, because I'm postmenopausal. But I could just imagine my niece saying it as well. So it didn't, you know, it's that continuation of the language. So, yeah. And I just think there's probably slightly more humour. That might be a misconception, but I don't know if there's just slightly more humour.
I think there is. I think there's more
Northern
humour.
accent.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This show, Riot Women, has been something that's been brewing in your mind for a lot of years. You've spoken about Rock Follies as being a sort of inspiration, but Riot Women also feels really contemporary.
Yeah.
What was it about this story that you thought this is the right time to tell this story now?
I think there's 2 points there. So Rock Follies, I don't know if any people remember, some people will remember it and some people won't. So it was a show that was on TV like literally 50 years ago. The second series was called Rock Follies of 77. So it's literally 50 years since the first series was on. But, so it sounds like it's an old TV show, but it so wasn't. It was so contemporary when it was on. It was ahead of its time. It was like, I remember I was 12 or 13 when I didn't see the first series. My dad wouldn't let me watch it. I was so little. I was 12. And he must have thought it was a bit risque and I couldn't watch it. But for some reason I insisted on seeing it when the second series came on. And I can't quite remember now why that would have been. Now, I suspected I'd seen a trailer and I thought, oh my God, I've got to watch that. So I badgered him to let me watch it, and he did. And it just had this profound effect on me. It was so alive. I'd never seen a TV show that was so alive. It was so... it kind of created an atmosphere in a way that of its own that I'd never seen a TV show do before. And I think very few shows do that. You know, over the years since that show, I think there's a small handful of shows that they just have, you can't be anywhere else other than in this TV show. It was wonderful. It just had this kind of shocking effect on me as a you know, a very impressionable 13-year-old. I remember thinking when I'd watched the first episode, oh, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make shows like that for telly. I mean, I didn't know how people made shows. I didn't know what the jobs were. But it just had that huge effect on me that I thought, oh, that's it now, that's what I'm going to do. And I often feel lucky that I knew from an early age what the plan was. So it was very contemporary, even though it sounds like an old show. It epitomised ahead of the curve thinking. And it's never left me. It's like always there when I write anything now. But why did I come to write Riot Women now? Ever since then, I'd wanted to write about a female rock band. That desire has never gone away. So it was about combining. I think any good TV show it isn't one good idea; it's two good ideas fused together. And the other idea for me with this, besides the female rock band, was to write about menopause, but not menopause per se, because it's. Every time you mention menopause, I started working on this about 10, 15 years ago, and 10, 15 years ago, if you said menopause to TV commissions, they'd probably just show you the door, you know. So for me, it was about it wasn't about writing about menopause, it was about writing about women the age that I was then, sort of 50, mid-50s, I'm 62 now, and writing about the kind of experiences that I was going through, and exploring them, because I was feeling, I think I was starting with the menopause, although I didn't really know how to articulate it, because there wasn't as much information around then as there is. You know, in the last 10 years, we've had a huge amount of information on telly, and people just do talk about it a lot more now. I think things like Woman's Hour would have been talking about it 20 years ago, but I think probably it was the only show in the media that was. And I started, I think, when I was directing Gentleman Jack, we start filming at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd get into my trailer about 7, and I remember just feeling really tearful. And I didn't know why, because I was having a ball. It was like I was directing a show about Anne Lister. How fantastic is that? But then I'd be tearful. And the makeup designer, Lynn, was on HRT, and she said, you just need HRT, you're menopausal, that's all this is. And it kind of was, and I realised she was right, but it took a while to come round to the idea of taking HRT, because I believed all what I now know is nonsense about it causes breast cancer, which it doesn't. I know if you've got breast cancer, you can't take it because of the estrogen, but it doesn't cause it. Yeah. So I'd believed all those old myths that were out there. Anyway, so I was like mid-50s, and for me, it was wanting to write about all the things that I felt were piling onto me. Yeah. So my mum had started with dementia. I'd got teenage boys who were taking up a lot of bandwidth. My marriage was getting a bit, rocky, and you're at the height of your career, so you've got a huge amount of responsibility, and you're balancing a lot of things. And then the menopause starts, and you get brain fog, and you can't remember things, and people ask you if you want a cup of tea, and you burst out crying because you don't know whether you want one or not. So it feels like you're managing you're giving a lot, and it's like nobody I think one of the biggest things that struck me with menopause was you start to feel kind of invisible. You do start to feel like low, and you don't really know why, and you're just dealing with all these things. And I think the penny drop that's what it was. It was that time of life where physically, biologically, you do change. But you've also got all this stuff going on, this life stuff going on that you're just dealing with. Because you're the person who deals with everything. And it's like, bring it on because I can deal with it. And then you realise in the middle of all that, you don't know who you are anymore. So I thought, oh, well, write about this then. So it was amalgamating those two concepts, really, I wanted to find a way to write about middle age and the effects of the menopause in a way that wasn't a drag.
Yeah.
That was uplifting and entertaining. And it seemed to me that combining those two things would offer me that opportunity. So it was kind of, I thought it would do that, and I think it did to some extent. I'm trying to make season 2 a bit funnier. Season 1 got quite dark, which, you never know how a show is going to evolve when you start. You kind of start planning, you've got stories, you invent your characters, and then at some point they do kind of take on a life of their own. So, for instance, the first draft of episode 1, no, it didn't get as far as the first draft. I think the first sort of iteration as a series of potential storylines, Kitty didn't exist. She wasn't there at all. And then a friend of mine told me an anecdote about a friend of hers who'd been very adversely affected by this other woman who'd just behaved really badly. And it was awful. In real life, the story was, I can't tell you what it was because it's probably real, it's real people. This woman had behaved really badly, and it was shocking. And then I thought, but why do people behave badly? And out of that thought about why people can behave in ways that really affect other people badly, Kitty kind of emerged as a very, very damaged person, but to whom something very, very tragic had happened in the past. So Kitty came in at a slightly later stage than the other characters, and then she kind of took over. And so the story, it ceased to be quite as funny as I'd originally envisaged, because her story just became so dark so quickly. It all went from Last Tango straight into Happy Valley Land, it was internally. But I was very conscious of that, and I really wanted to balance up with the two, because there was all the dark stuff with Beth. We opened with Beth feeling suicidal, and Kitty also, trying to kill herself Beth trying to kill herself quietly at home, and Kitty doing it large style, big time in a supermarket. So I was very conscious of keeping a balance so that people felt entertained by it and felt that they were in a fun world, not just one where things get very dark. And of course, Nisha's story got very dark as well. So it was trying to. Season 2, I'm desperately trying to make it as funny as it is dark. Which I always think is if you can pull that off, it's kind of it's an entertaining combination, hopefully. Yeah.
It really is, and I think across your writing, Sally, that ability to really bring together the sort of different emotional registers, and for audiences to really feel those, is so beautiful and incredibly powerful.
I think the big thing for me with Riot Women was, as I say, I wanted to write about middle age and all the, the responsibilities and anxieties that brings, but in a way that wasn't a drag. And what emerged really was, we talked about this a lot, that it was about friendship and creativity. It was about how these women get together out of friendship and actually do something. They find a way of expressing themselves that they didn't know was there.
Yes.
Which was, it was one of the most fun things I've ever done to sort of prep, because I'd always wanted to learn to play the drums ever since I was a kid, and then it suddenly occurred to me that I could actually afford to buy some now. So I went out and bought a drum kit, and I thought this was great prep for writing about a rock band. So I learned to play the drums, and I've bought quite a few guitars now as well, and I've learned to play guitars. The guitar, I've just bought another bass actually, so I can play the guitar really badly, and I can play the drums slightly better than badly. But what was interesting doing that though was that it was fun, it was interesting, it was, and it's a good thing for your brain apparently to learn a new instrument when you're older. I don't think it's done my brain any good, but I keep trying. And then when we were rehearsing, I asked the women if they would learn their instruments because I didn't want it, when we were filming, I didn't want it to look like they were miming, because I hate it when you can see people aren't really playing. It looks pants and it just takes you outside the drama. So they did actually all learn to play their instruments. I think we got them tutors for 5 months. They learned, apart from Lorraine, who wasn't available, and she learned in 5 weeks to play the drums, to a level where it was credible that she was actually doing it. And they rehearsed, when we started rehearsing, we had 2 weeks of rehearsal, 1 week for the scenes and 1 week for the music. And they had a week together in a studio in Elland. And by the end of the week, I think there were 3 songs that they performed in season 1. 2 really properly, Riot Women and Seeing Red. And by the end of the week, they could play that song properly between them. And it was so euphoric. It was one of the most extraordinary, exciting things I've ever seen. Actors often bond because they're thrown together and they have to, do things that are quite exposing emotionally and that kind of thing. But I've never seen actors bond like that. When they got through this song together, they got to the end of the song without stopping. And they were just euphoric. They were just absolutely all grinning their heads off, and it was wonderful. But I think that's the great thing about the story and about music, is that it really does. You can only be in the moment when you play music with other people. It does really take you out of yourself. And I think that was kind of the kind of message of the show. Really, is that if you feeling down about the menopause, just start a rock band, and you'll be fine. Yeah.
But that exhilaration and that vulnerability as well of sort of playing publicly, that is incredibly powerful. And as you mentioned, Sally, you bought drums, you learnt the drums yourselves, you asked your fabulous ensemble cast to learn their instruments. What is there's something in that sort of sense of learning a new skill and sort of being publicly vulnerable in a way that the group go through in Riot Women. What did learning the drums bring to you as a writer, Sally? Did it have that same sort of exhilarating, vulnerable feature, if you will?
Not for me, because I don't do it in public.
Did they not ask you to play for them?
Yeah. Tamsin Gregg filmed me playing without telling me what she was doing, which was horrible. That was not nice. On her phone, not for public consumption. Anyway. What it gave me was an understanding of... The story was about these, that Jess enters this talent contest for them, and the object of season 1 is that they've got to learn to do it in 6 weeks. In 6 weeks' time, they've got to be able to play a song in public. And so, for me, learning an instrument myself was, how realistic is that? Because it isn't realistic, let's be honest. It's a bit of a conceit. Nobody can really do that. I mean, I'm sure, some people could if they really put their minds to it. So I wanted to gauge just how to try and make it credible by going through it myself, so I could write about it in a way that was believable, because as I say, I'd always wanted to play the drums, but I'd never actually sat at a drum kit, because it isn't the kind, you can't go into PMT in Leeds and have a bash, can you? Because you'd just sound ridiculous, and you'd do it like once or twice and then better not do that. So I'd never actually sat at a drum kit, and I remember when I got this drum kit, Felix, my youngest son, who's 26, said, you do know they're very loud, those, don't you? And I didn't quite know what he meant, because I was like, because they're loud, they're drums. But when you play them properly, they're fucking loud, they're really loud. Because I think you tickle around on them to start with, and then you have a lesson, and it's like, you really have to smash them. I had a drum lesson last week with a lady in a band in Oxford called Beaker. And she came round to my house to give me a lesson, and she was really whacking them. And even though I've been learning now for 2 years, I thought, I'm really not hitting them hard enough, even now, So what it gave me for the show was just an understanding of the physicality of instruments. You know, we tend to, you know, we all see rock bands, we all love rock bands, and they look so cool, and it's like, oh, I can do that. And it's like, you can't, it's really hard. You know, playing a guitar is just as hard as playing a cello or a piano or anything else that, you know, people traditionally learn. And rock stars make it look so cool. And of course, the physicality of instruments is a very different thing. What they make look elegant and effortless, you know, people who don't know how to hold a guitar, it looks like a lump of wood, you know, it's ridiculous. So it gave me that understanding of the physicality of it and how realistic or unrealistic it was to be able to play instruments in that period of time. That there was this great bit in a scene where Tamsin, but it wasn't in the script, where they're playing for the first time, and she goes up the fretboard going 3, 5, 7, which is how you measure keys, and it's the notes on a fretboard, and that is what it's like, where it's just, you know, you're back to basics, and it's hard, and it's not going to sound like it does when Keith Richards does it, you know.
Thanks, Sally. I mean, you mentioned some of the brilliant cast there, some of your characters. There really did seem to be an energy from that combination of women and the sort of friendship that was reflected on screen. Were you involved in the casting, Sally? And if you were, what were you looking for in those characters to come together in that way that feels so credible?
Yeah, I think I'm always involved in casting because I'm an exec. And if you're the director, which I am these days on my own stuff, that's your job, is to cast it. What I always look for, squealy. What I like is, why I loved working with Sarah Lancashire, for instance, is she really gets humour. Her comic timing is like exquisite. She's so funny, but then she can so deliver the heavy stuff as well. Yeah. You know, it's like she's so heartbreakingly real when she's doing something emotional. And I like to think my writing is, as I said earlier, it's as funny as it is dark. And actors who can pull that off are the ones I really, really want to work with. And so I think when we cast Riot Women, we were trying to get the best people, obviously. But I think all of them have funny bones. All 5 of those women are really good at comedy. Well, and Taj as well, who plays Nisha, so 6 of them. But they also can deliver the heavy stuff as well. The biggest casting challenge was Kitty, because we needed somebody who really, really could sing.
Yes.
And we looked at a few big-name actresses, because essentially Kitty's the lead, we're sort of joint lead with Joanna playing Beth. And we looked at some, you know, big-name actresses who were the right age. And there just aren't many. There aren't many, you know, like approximately Saran's age, 40, 42. And to find somebody of that age who's a big hitter, who could carry a 6-part series, who can also really, really sing, it was really hard. And I'd seen Rosalie on stage in Company in the West End, and I really wanted her to come in and show us what she could do. And she did. She was wonderful. She did the most amazing audition, and then she sang and blew our heads off in the room with the sheer volume of somebody who can belt like that. It's quite shocking to be in this. We were in quite a small room, and you know, when somebody like that starts belting, there's like the hair stand up on the back of your neck. Yeah. So we were just really lucky with her. But you know, at the time she wasn't a big name, and you know, the BBC were like, we had to wait for the BBC to say yes, because we knew they'd be looking for a bigger name. But I don't think we could have done better. I thought she was just extraordinary. And they just all bonded, and I think it was partly to do with the music, very much to do with the music, very much. They all really embraced the idea of learning their instruments. I think Amelia's still having guitar lessons, you know. I don't think she's given up. But the learning to play the instruments was just, I suspect they'd have bonded anyway, because, you know, actors tend to do that. But it was definitely a great tool to bring everyone together. And I think they felt really proud of what they'd achieved, you know. It was kind of, none of them had ever done anything, apart from Rosie, who could sing and play anyway. None of them had ever actually done anything quite like that before. So
Well, it's such a collective, isn't it? Both within the story and to be able to come together as actors and to create what was created, and you can feel it through the screen. Sally, without giving too much away, you are now writing series 2. Is there anything you are able to share with us about
I was quite keen, if we got to go on, that the Riot Women would never become superstars. You know, I didn't want it to be like Calendar Girls, where they end up in Hollywood, because I just thought, I didn't believe that. So I like the idea that they never really get anywhere. Which is quite true to life. You know, there are so many fantastic bands out there who make really not reasonable money at all. I was talking to our band Arcs, who write the songs for us. They've got a manager called Dexter in Brighton, and he was giving me some information and advice about how to progress them as a band. And he said, I'm working on a story where they do go on tour, but it's slightly above their ability, for reasons that we find out later, with a much bigger band. And he told me that they'd be getting £300 a gig. They wouldn't get any petrol money, they wouldn't get accommodation money. This is all over the country, however many, 7 of them in the band, and they get 300 quid and that's it. So I was quite shocked to learn that bands just don't make that much money unless you hit the massive big time. So it's kind of... that's the way forward with them, that they never really... they progress in terms of what they write and their personal music ability and that kind of thing. But I just wanted to keep it grounded and make sure that they don't ever... the reality is that most bands just don't make that much money. And I suppose that the stories are more complex as well. And if they hit the big time, there's nowhere to go, really, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
So maybe season 6, if we ever get that far.
Yeah.
If the BBC still exists in 6 years.
Yeah. Fingers crossed that
yes, it should. But yes.
Sally, after audiences have spent time with those Riot Women from season 1, if there was one thing that you really want to sit and stay with audiences, what would that be? I kind of like the idea that it might be like book clubs, where women watch it and go, "Oh, I'm going to set up a band." So like book clubs popping up everywhere. 15 years ago, it's like, I hope that, I don't know, the idea that people might take up an instrument and get together and play, because it is an extraordinary thing to do. Yeah, so friendship, clubs, music.
Creativity.
Creativity, absolutely.
Yeah. The antidote to depression, I find, personally.
Yeah. Sally, alongside the second series, I know that you're working on multiple projects, some which you're able to talk about and some not. But I think you might be able to say a little bit about a film that you have been working on. So I wondered if you might be able to share with us anything about that.
I think I can talk about it a bit. It's a film I'm working on with James Norton, and I jokingly call it my porn film. And it's called 5 Make Porn in Little Baddo. And it's a story. I'm doing it with BBC Film. I probably shouldn't say too much, actually, because it hasn't been announced yet. But I will. It's a real life story that happened to my husband when he was little. I think he was 11. His big sister Becky was 15. His big brother Chris was 13. He was 11, and his little sister Griselda was 9. And they went on holiday with their mum and dad to this cottage in Little Baddo where their aunt and uncle lived. And their aunt and uncle had gone away for the week. And this was just a family tradition that they went there for a week every year. Well, Aunt Alicia and Uncle Davy went off. And they got there, and Uncle James, their mum's brother, rang up and announced that he was coming to do some pickups for his latest movie, which was a porn movie. And it ended up, he brought this little tiny crew to do his pickups, and it ended up with the kids, like Austin was doing the clapperboard. And the kids all helped. you know, they didn't know it was a porn film, and they were only pickups. They weren't like naughty bits, but essentially this group of kids ended up helping make a porn film. So it's the story of, I said far too, you're not going to go and see it now, are you? Anyway, hopefully we're going to be filming that next year.
Fingers crossed, Sally. So that's with the BBC and hopefully
the BBC film,
BBC film, hopefully next year.
Yeah.
Everything.
And Riot Women, hopefully we'll be filming that next year, next spring.
Yeah.
And a couple of other Netflix things that I can't
talk about that. Well, I mean, it sounds like it's continuing to be incredibly busy.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, the TV industry is not in a great place at the moment, but yeah, keep going.
Yeah.
Try to.
Well, obviously, Riot Women's had phenomenal success. We're looking forward to that second series. We're looking forward to this film, which sounds fabulous, and your other projects when they're announced and we're able to talk about those. What I'd like to do now is open up for some audience questions. So we're going to try and take a range of questions from different audience members. So if anybody has a question they would like to ask Sally, I think we have some lovely colleagues with some roving mics. The lights are on us, Sally. I'm squinting
and I haven't got my glasses on, so.
But yes.
I won't be able to.
Oh, lovely. There's a hand just here. Thank you very much indeed.
I'm really interested that you've talked about two things that you encountered in late childhood, early teen times, and that have been brewing for a long time. Yeah. Can you say a bit about that more generally? Do you think we all have those things, those kind of unresolved ideas that are cooking up and we could be creative with later on?
I don't know is the truth, but I personally find the older I get, the more I do go back in my own personal life and find inspiration and ideas. It's definitely a pattern I've realised for myself, that I go back and remember things that inspire me to write things now. And I've also realised, slightly tangential but related, I think I realised this when I wrote Last Tango, that the older your characters are, the more history they've got. So the richer they are, because they've done more stuff and they've got more background, they've got more things that inform the present going on in the background. But yeah, I think the older I get, the more I think it is quite common for the older you get to think more about the past. And I do often dig into the past. I try to keep moving forward, but it is interesting how much I look back as well.
I think that there was a phrase that you used, Sally, when we're kindly interviewing you for the book, and you said it's slings and arrows. The more people live, the more they have been through, the more they have experienced, and actually, in terms of story, that's absolute gold.
I was thinking about this the other day because what was it? Oh, my son rang up and said, "There's no hot water at the house," and it's like, calm down. It's not, it's no hot water. It's just the pilot light's gone out. But the first time you experience something, it's a big deal, and by the time you get to our age, you've experienced so much that when something is a big deal, it is really it's got to be something important.
Yes.
Because you've built up so much armour about how to deal with stuff. So I do think the older you get, the more slings and arrows you have to deal with, and so when something does come to get you at our age, it's challenging because it's got to be big stuff for you. But, you just get tougher, don't you, the older you get?
Yeah.
But I think that's why I think older people are more interesting to write about. But what do I know? The commissioners just want kids on telly, don't they? Don't know why, because kids don't watch telly, don't they?
Thank you. Great question. Thank you. Well, I think we have another question. Sorry, I'm just going to step to the side.
I can't see.
So I can.
I can't see because the lights, and I can't see because I have my glasses on.
Okay, sorry. So we've a question here. Second row. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sally. I'm interested that you used to write for the Archers and Coronation Street, and I'm wondering if you still listen to those programmes, and or whether there's anything else currently on the TV or radio that you make a point of listening to. And
yeah. I never watch Coronation Street anymore. I've got completely out of the habit of watching that. I don't know why. I think when I stopped writing it, I didn't like not knowing what happened. and I kind of gave up watching it. I do listen to The Archers now and again in the car. But if I'm driving and it comes on, I do enjoy listening to The Archers. In terms of what I like watching on telly at the moment, I really like Hacks. I don't know, has anybody... have you seen Hacks?
No.
Oh, it's fantastic. It's an American show about this 70-year-old comedian who's got her own stage show in Las Vegas. And in episode 1, she loses her stage show. And it's about her relationship with her younger scriptwriter. It's like a real odd couple. That's very, very funny. It's Jean Smart playing Deborah Vance. And then Deadlock, which is an Australian drama, which I think is very much like Happy Valley, except it's more comedic. I was out in Australia last summer and I went to visit the locations where they shot Deadlock in Tasmania, which was brilliant. And the other thing I've really enjoyed on TV recently is Last One Laughing. Is that what it's called? I don't actually watch a lot of drama, to be honest. We were saying this earlier, there are so many thrillers on these days. There are so many police procedurals. And there's so much TV these days that's written as like wallpaper. I think it's called free screening, isn't it? Where you've got your phone, you've got your laptop, and the telly's like on over there somewhere. And there's so many shows that are written now for people who aren't really quite watching, I think, and I hate that. And there's just so many shows now that are oriented towards the American market because we can't make British telly anymore without money from the American streamers. So if your show doesn't do well in America, it doesn't get recommissioned. So we do skew our shows. I try not to, but if you want to get recommissioned, it has to be skewed towards an American audience, which predominantly means being more male-centric, being more about men shooting guns and stuff, and men being centre stage and women being more peripheral. So I tend not to watch quite as much telly as I should, probably. But yeah, Hacks, Amazon, and Deadlock, also on Amazon. Are really good and very women-centric shows as well.
I might be in a room of competition here, but as Gentleman Jack's biggest fan, and you've put Shibden Hall on the map, why has there not been a Series 2? Can there be a Series 2? You mentioned about funding from America, and I think it was massively popular over there.
Yeah.
Series 3, sorry.
Yeah.
So is there going to be another one? It would be amazing if there was.
No, there isn't. It's kind of because of what I've just talked about, in fact. So we were lucky with the whole series, really, that HBO came on board to fund it with the BBC. And we got season 2, which was fantastic. And then HBO got bought out by Warner Brothers. And their remit changed. And they felt that it did do really well in America. We've got some fantastic American fans. It's the American fans who've created the Ann Lister birthday weekend, which happens every year in Halifax now. But the problem was we didn't get enough of an audience in America for them to feel that they wanted to continue funding it, which is sad because it did so much good. It was hugely popular. But that's why, essentially, that it didn't... Their new remit was just more men with guns, not many Yorkshire lesbians. So that's sadly why it didn't get recommissioned, because it did do really well and it had a lot of fabulous fans and women who really, and men, I was talking to a man last week who absolutely loved it. It had a really good following. But I think we have to be glad that it got made at all on the scale it got made on, because we had a huge budget. And I think it's a show that just would not get made now with the climate that we're in with TV. And I think if it had got made any earlier, we would never got such a fantastic budget. And if it had happened late, if it had pitched it later, it would never have happened. So I know it's sad. I'm really sad that we didn't get another series. I would have loved to have told the story right to the end of her life. But I think, you know, having got over the upset of it not being recommissioned, I think we have to be grateful to HBO that they did come on board.
Yes.
And I got to make the series at all, and not only just one series, but 2 series. And you know, that Anne Lister was put on the map, and now so many people all over the world know about Anne Lister who didn't before. You know, and the show's had a huge impact. I mean, the new college at York was named after Anne Lister, yes. And it was because of the TV show. I think that's pretty certain. You know, there's just been Northern Ballet have just made the Gentleman Jack Ballet, which was on at Sadler's Wells last week. And again, it's all because of the TV show. So it's done a huge amount of good in the world. But now I'm as, you know, sad as anyone that it didn't get a 3rd series. But that's why. And it's why I don't think we will now get a 3rd series, unfortunately. But I don't think it matters. I think she's out there. And there's so many people now who can read about her. And so much work's being done on her. OUP are going to publish the whole diary, all 26 volumes. And again, that's because of the TV show. So it did do a huge amount of good, but just sad that we didn't get to go on. But if it had, I wouldn't have written Riot Women, so
Yes.
I can't regret that.
Yeah. Swings and roundabouts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Great question. I think there's a hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th row there. Sorry, if I'm missing anyone up there because of where the lights are, please give me a wave because I can't quite see. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. I'm curious about Kitty.
Yeah.
You said that she wasn't there at the beginning.
Yeah.
So how did she go, excuse me, I need to be in this show? And I'm also wondering who's in the wings waiting to be in another bit of Riot Woman?
So, I mean, it was just, as I say, I started to work on this idea of why do people behave badly. And it's often because of damage, you know, historic damage, which we know that's Kitty's backstory. And I think it was just that she was just, some characters just come kind of fully formed and take over. And it was extraordinary the way that happened. I can't kind of be too articulate about it because it's just something, I know it's just something that happens in my head, but sometimes you just, I find a character just kind of takes over. You just find yourself, it's all spilling out of their mouth, and you kind of feel, there's this point where you feel like you're just this conduit through which things are happening that you have no control over, and it's just a bit of gold dust when you find a character who has that much about them instantly that happens. And she was like a prime example of that. She's like one of my favourite characters ever that I've come up with. So it's that weird bit of alchemy that happens in your head, I suppose. Sorry, that's a really shit answer, I'm sorry. But I know what I mean.
Sally, one of the big differences between American series and British series seems to me to be that when America gets a good idea, they then write it on and on and on until they drive it into the dust. As a writer, how do you know when to stop?
Their system is very different to ours. So they have big writers' rooms. On a show like Hacks, which I've just been talking about, which I love, I don't know how they work exactly, but they will have writers' rooms where they have, you know, maybe 10 people, 10 writers in the room, and they brainstorm things a lot more thoroughly than we do. With us, it tends to be a smaller, we do brainstorm things thoroughly, but it'll be a much smaller group of people. And it's much more typical in England that one writer will write a whole series, or you might sometimes get 1 or 2 other people on board. Unless it's a big franchise like Doctor Who, where they will use that American model more. Or a soap like Corrie or EastEnders. Sorry, what was the other part of the... How do I know? So, because I think with American shows, they've got that bigger team of people, they can make things, they can spread things out more, they can come up with more volume of story in the way that the soaps have to. And I think when you're someone who just writes your own stuff and nobody else comes on board, it's inevitably it's going to be a smaller series. And because I direct now as well, that just takes out the amount of time I can write. So with something like Happy Valley, where we did 3 series, rather than, you know, in America they might do something like 8, or something like that. It is just that it's one person doing writing and directing. And you know, you're crafting it on your own, whereas they would have multiple people doing both those jobs often. But I think, but you know, with Happy Valley, me and Sarah made a really conscious decision that we didn't want to do more than 3 series, because we didn't want it to become a sort of pale shadow of itself. We wanted to make sure that, you know, series 3 was as good as series 1, and nobody felt that it had gone off the boil, which I like to think we did do that. But you know, obviously the people with money, that isn't what they want. If you've got a show that's that successful, they just want to flog it for as much as they can. But I think we're lucky in this country that the powers that be at the BBC would respect that we wanted to do it that way. Whereas in America, it is, you know, it just is more about the money than it is about the prestige of how good a show is. Yeah, that's kind of it.
Okay, I can see we have at least 2 more hands. So these are probably going to be the last 2 questions.
Hello. Do you have any interest in directing other writers' work other than your own?
I have done on stage. I think the problem is it takes so much time to direct a show that I mean, I would in theory, but in practice it's just impossible because of the time limits. Because I'm writing so much stuff that I really don't want other people to be directing it for me. So in theory, I'd be quite interested to have a go at directing somebody else's stuff, but I can't imagine a way in which I could make that happen. If people sent me a script and I really liked it, I might go for it, but that's not happened yet.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm just interested in something about how you felt. To me, the moment in all your work is the scene in the kitchen at the end of Happy Valley.
Yeah.
Which comes back to me, you know, like comes a bit, I must do everybody. How did it feel when you saw them do that, when it was finished?
What
was the impact on you of seeing them do that?
Well, I wasn't actually there because I didn't direct that. That was in the second block, and Fergus directed that. So I wasn't actually physically in the room when that happened. I wish I had been, it would have been amazing. Although I think it was quite difficult on the day. We ran out of time, I believe. And we had to drop a few shots. And there was the big stunt with the fire, which I think, this is the thing in telly, you've got something like fire and it'll take about 5 hours to do that, and then the actors get 5 minutes to do the interesting stuff. But when I have directed scenes like big emotional things, you know, like big scenes I've done with Siobhan and Sarah in that kitchen, I always feel so privileged to be there with them. You know, it's like you're the first person to see these fabulous performances. And you have a hand in creating them because you're there as the director who they will turn to and ask questions of, or they want your approval, or, you know, you're the person who's helping them do what they need to do. And it's just a great privilege. It's just extraordinary being in that space with, you know, having written the script, and then you get real life people who come to play these characters that you've created, and they say your dialogue. It's that in itself is a thrill. But then to be in the room with them when they're doing it for the first time, and to be the first person to see those performances, it's, you know, it's kind of a little bit of magic. It's really exquisite. It's kind of why I do it. Or it is now. It's wonderful. It's a great privilege because, you know, telly is full of people. A lot of people want to do these jobs. You know, it's a very competitive industry, and to be working at the top of your game, you're working with, you know, the most talented people in all those fields, not just actors, but, you know, the DOP and the designer and the costume designer and you know, your AD team. They're all people who are really at the top of the game. And it's just, it's a great privilege to be in the position where you're creating your own work, and you're not just writing it, for me, not just writing it now, directing it as well. It's a real privilege to be in that kind of company.
Thank you. I think we could go on and have lots more questions. Unfortunately, I think I will be in serious trouble if we don't finish the session on time. But it has been an absolute and utter pleasure. Sally, thank you so much for sharing with everyone about your work, about aspects of your process, about what's coming next. For the sort of sneak peeks, we're all going to be looking forward very much to seeing what's coming out next year. I'm sure that that many of the audience members here today may well be interested in the book that Sally did the foreword for, in Anne's book on Gentleman Jack. That is going to be for sale here through the independent bookseller, Fox Lane Books, and Sally will also kindly be signing books for anyone that wishes to have a signed copy. I think all that remains is to say thank you all very, very much for being here. Sally, huge thanks to you. It's been an absolute pleasure. We are very, very lucky to have such a fabulous writer, not only in the British ecosystem. You are at the top of your game. We are delighted to be able to engage with your work. But thank you so much for being here.